Welcome to this last part of the orchid videos. In this video I'm going to show you how to make the classic Phalanopsis. The Phalanopsis or moth orchid is an iconic orchid that is very popular as a houseplant as well. And of course this comes in white, which is very popular for weddings, but it also comes in various shades of pink as well. There are also hybrids, I've got spots on them, there's green and purple ones, so again lots and lots of variations. But I'm just going to show you the classic white Phalanopsis orchid. Now when we make this orchid, we're going to start off first of all by making the throat. Alright, now this is quite a complex throat in the way it's made, but as I said, it's going to be made in parts. And when you make this orchid, you have the option of either making the two small areas here either in yellow, or just you can just press white in, which is just going to feel a little bit like the Cymbidium orchid. So if I was making this orchid, especially if I was going to make it say in very dark pink, I would recommend you do the yellow balls of paste in the mold. When you press the pink in, then you'll have those already there, so you don't have to try and dust yellow on top of pink where you're not really going to get the right depth of color. For white orchid you could do either or, because we can just dust this yellow and then this one you can just make in yellow paste. So I'm going to show you how to use the yellow paste technique here. So I'm going to start off with a yellow paste here. I'm going to measure off two small balls of paste. All right, so we're going to take number 2 small size ball of paste. All right, so it's going to go through the hole, and I have 2 of those. Okay, I'm going to take just a little bit of vegetable shortening and put onto the mold here. Especially make sure in this part here. And this will sort of dry on off the paste, you know, once you take this out. And then I'm going to just place the little ball of number 2 small here, and the number 2 small here. Just going to use a little cornstarch on the companion tool. And I'm just going to flatten those down like that. And then I'm going to just put a little touch of shortening on the top of those vegetable fats so the white will stick to them. Okay, now we're going to measure off your paste. So when we measure this off, we're actually going to measure off 4 pieces of paste. Okay, so I've already got pre-measured here. So first of all we need a number 5 size. So number 5, so there's going to be number 5 size ball of paste, regular size. Then we have a number 6 regular size, and then we have 2 number 6 smalls, so those would be number 6 that go through the hole. Okay, now we're going to, you can just keep these covered with a pot. I'm going to work with them straight away, but as I said, you can keep these covered with a pot. Now the number 5 is going to be used for the center part here. All right, so this will be the number 5 size one. This is the smallest one, so this is going to be rolled into a little sausage here. Put a little bit of cornstarch onto that, and this is going to actually go into this center part of the mold. All right, so it's going to just go down the middle part here. Okay, so just going to position that into the middle like this. The number 6 pieces are going to be attached where the yellow part is there into like a little carrot shape. All right, so you're just going to attach those into like a little carrot shape like this. All right, and then the number 6 is going to be attached in a carrot shape where everything meets here. So you want the sort of paste almost to like overlap a little bit like this. Now we're going to work the wing petals into the mold here. It's going to work across the top here like this, and you're going to just work this down. You can use your Dresden tool, and you can just sort of work the paste into the, so you're actually just going to work within the mold. So you're going to work around this area here and just get this into the side part of the mold. Okay, just make sure that you sort of get within there and just blend the paste together. Okay, you can just pop a little touch of cornstarch on the top, and then what I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to use my little companion tool and I'm just going to roll the paste down. If you can just sort of press the paste in and just sort of carry on rolling it, because what we're going to do here is we're filling up the little cavities with the paste. Okay, so you see how I'm just rolling that down, Then I'm going to just press this in with my cosmetic sponge here, like so. Now I don't want to press too much in this area here because this needs to be a little bit thicker, because that's where the wire is going to go in, and also that's where the yellow part is here. Now using my little flexi scraper, all right, I'm going to just use this in a sawing action. Just going to saw away, and so you see that's going to, and just press that back in there to make sure that you, and then you can just saw up to about level with here. You can just saw down. So they're just going to just trim off that, just that little bit of extra paste here. Okay, and just press this in with your cosmetic sponge. So if you do have any areas that look a little bit thin, you can also patch them, you know, because you can basically just take like a little extra tiny piece of paste here and just patch these in. But these want to be level with the top of the mold here, all right? And then this will be a little bit past the top of those, going to be a little bit sort of more bulky, so you've got a little bit of substance here, a little thinner on your edge there. But you can sort of see the, just make sure that this is sort of within the mold here, like this, all right? So now we're going to take the wire. So this is a 24 gauge wire. I'm going to put this into egg white, no hook on this. This is going to just be inserted into the paste here. So it's going to just come into the, and it wants to stop just before the little, this almost looks a little bit like a necktie shape, all right? So it wants to stop. So the actual wire has stopped about, I can see the end of the wire about right here. So literally just a couple of millimeters from that in part. So it's just really important to make sure you blend this, you know, this in so it will all stay together, because you now really want it to be like one piece, all right? So now we're going to turn this over, and then going to now just remove the excess paste. Now don't worry if your yellow has bled a little bit, because you can just gently press this back, because this is actually going to be dusted. This is going to be dusted around here, yellow. Anyways, we're actually going to dust yellow all the way around there, but you can just squash this back. Because it just squashes out, and if you put too much pressure on it, would squash out even more, but this will be dusted yellow, so it will be fine. So now we're going to, first of all, on the back of the center, you can see these are your wing petals. They've got the veining on them. So on the soft side of your pad, we're just going to go around your edge of those. So just going to go around your edge like this. And then you're going to put this onto a cosmetic sponge, and you're just going to just gently cup these. So just going to cup them. And then what I'm going to do is going to take my little companion tool. And with my companion tool, I'm going to just roll from the tip. I'm just going to just roll, and this will just curl your little tendrils, you see? So you do this on your, see what it's actually doing is curling these. You want to do it on the soft pad, but you can see here better on the black. But you see it actually just curls them around here like that. This is going to give you the characteristic little tendrils of the Phalaenopsis orchid. And then you're going to hold your companion tool, and you're just going to just pinch this around your companion tool so that you get this slight hollow on your throat, okay? Now, this is going to dry in a spoon. So what we're actually going to do here is we want to dry this into a spoon. So you're going to turn it upside down, all right? I'm holding my thumb and first finger where the wire is, which is here, and I'm just going to just bend it just slightly. So you just bending the wire just a little bit this way. So when it goes into the spoon, this will just go into the spoon like this. Now you need to make sure that your tendrils are in the correct position. Now sometimes the tendrils could come like right the way up like this, but they want to be symmetrical, okay? But you just want to have the little tendrils, as I said, curl in. And this will just sort of sit into the spoon like that. Now, once this is dried, if you do have any little areas, like there's a little tiny gap here, which is just almost like a seam, we can fill that in with some softened paste, or we can use a little bit of, as I said, just some white paste with a little bit of egg white in, which we'll be using to assemble the flower. So that will be the flower column. And so this is the throat part of it. The column will be put on at the very last part. So this is the flower throat. So this would be put to one side to dry. Next week, I'm going to be going on to make the sepals and petals for the orchid. So now we're going to move on to the sepals and petals. So that is going to be the outside part of the orchid. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to make these, first of all, the sepals, and then we're going to put those into a zip top bag, and then we're going to make the petals, the two wing petals. Very similar to the assembly of the Dendrobium. It's just like think of it like a large version of the Dendrobium. Now I have here a 9 small. Okay, so it's a 9 small ball of paste. It wants to go through the number 9 hole. And I'm going to make this into a 9 centimeter sausage. So I'm actually going to cut this into thirds. So this technique is similar to if you watch my sunflowers and Gerber daisies. So it wants to be like 9 centimeters. Okay, on the size guide. And then what we're going to do is going to just cut this into 3 centimeter pieces. Okay. I'm just going to make each of the ends just like a little rounded. And then I'm just going to take the square part here, 1, 2, 3, and just put these together in like a little triangle shape. Okay. So now I'm going to take my mold here. Okay, I'm just going to put a little bit of vegetable sugar into here. I'll lay this paste into the mold. All right, and I'm going to just sort of press this in with my cosmetic sponge initially, this will help to make sure we also blend all of those 3 pieces together. All right, so now I'm going to just sort of start to work the paste to the edge. Now this orchid is quite a thin orchid. It's quite fine, and so we're working the paste a little bit thinner in here for realism, but when you do this the first time, you can go a little bit bigger. So you could just use a regular number 9 size if you felt like you'd be a little bit more comfortable pushing that into the edge here. But you're just going to get this, but you want to have a little bit thicker in the middle. Just working this into your, so this will be the 3rd one. But also if you were doing this and you realize that you have just like a little area, you see like maybe this area here I made it a little bit thin, you can just literally just add a little bit of extra paste to that. That's just going to blend in. It's just going to blend in. So you can actually add extra paste if you need to in any areas. All right, so just get that a little bit thinner, and then as obviously you have that little bit of thickness in the middle. Veiner I'm going to use the back of this. I'm going to just use the fan veiner. So I'm just going to use the fan veiner here. Just going to just vein the 3, 1, 2, 3 like that with the fan veiner. Now this is basically going to be like the head, and then these will be the 2 legs. So you actually look at it, the distance between here and here is a little short. So these 2 that are closest together, this is the 2 by the bud, so that's going to be your legs, and this will be your head. They're all the same, but it's actually not completely symmetrical because obviously these are a little bit down. And then we're going to take this out of the mold. If you have any, do you have any little bit of extra, just use your companion tool just to get rid of that. Okay. I'm going to take this, I'm going to just turn this over onto my, I'm going to just soften this just slightly around your edge. This is on the back of the petal. And then I'm going to turn this over to the front. I'm going to put it on my little silicone mat here. And I'm just going to pop this into a zip top bag. So I want to stop this drying. Okay. I wouldn't put it in a flat because that will squash the softening, but just pop that onto a little silicone mat or on a piece of foam or something so it's easy to lift this out. So then what we're going to do is move on to the wing petals. So the wing petals are the side pieces here. So these are going to be made number 8 small. And you're going to make your wing petals here. Now you make 2 of these. I've already have done, one of these has already been done. I've done the left hand one. I'm going to show you the right hand one, okay? Now this is very similar to the Vanda orchid, but we won't wire these. Okay, this orchid, as I said, is made more like the Dendrobium. So again, just a little bit of vegetable shortening on here. And you can just roll this into a little cone shape. Just going to press this in like this. Okay, and then you're going to just start working this into here like this. So this is a little bit more of an advanced orchid. You can see, especially the throat part, that's a little bit, takes a little bit, but as I said, it's very achievable, the flower with flower pro. But as I said, it just, if the paste is a little bit thin for you, go a little bit thicker, and especially on this part here. But once you get used to it, it's just a question of working. And just remember, in different environments, sometimes the paste will dry quickly. So just that's where sometimes you'd add a little bit of the rolled fondant or the sugar paste to the paste, like I've shown you with the Renshaw paste, because that dries quickly. I just use the 85 grams of that and 15 grams of sugar paste or fondant. So here I'm going to use the veinner we use for the Vanda orchid. So that is going to be used over the surface here. Just going to press this on the top. You can also use like a little acrylic press on that as well. So you can use like a little acrylic. Now often, most times, will just pop straight out of the mold, all right? So, but you can see here we've got the, this is going to give you the, this is the front of the petal, all right? This is the front part of the petal. Because obviously with the shortening on there, it's going to be a little bit shiny. And as I said, we're going to pop that onto your pad, soft side of your pad, and then on the back of the petal, we're just going to just soften around here. These are a little bit more frilly than the sepals are, okay? So this is now going to give you this part. All right, so now we're going to build the flower. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build the flower here. So you can take this out. So what I would do is when you make the first wing petal, put that in the bag, and then make your second wing petal here, which I've already got here. All right, so these are going to be my wing petals here, like that. These will actually sit just like on the Dendrobium. These will actually sit here like this, all right? So this is sort of how they're going to sit. Now when you attach these, I'm going to put some, so what I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to turn them over, and I'm going to put some egg white just on the bottom part of each of them, just on the bottom part of each of them here, so that they have good contact. And this will just sit here, and you're just going to just press that on where it meets, and this one will go here. They just come to meet right in the middle, and just make sure you press that well, and you just want to just gently press where you can use your cosmetic sponge as well, but where the middle of the flower, where everything joins, where it's joined with glue, okay? Now we're going to put this into the crepe foam former to dry. I'm using some poly dowels. These are the cake straws, or you can use like straws here as well. And what we're going to do is going to just lift this off, so you can use your little flexi scraper. You can just lift this off and place this onto here like that. So this is going to go over the top of the piece. So you're just gonna sit into the hollow like this, okay? So it's actually, so the head is like in between, and it's going to sit over the top, and then you're going to get this nice shape. And then you're going to use your straws here, just going to lift these up, just going to pop the straws underneath. So this is going to give you your shape, okay? And then with your round end of your companion tool, just going to make a little hollow in the middle here, okay? So just going to make a little hollow, and then what you're actually going to do here is you're going to drill a hole. So you just want to actually drill a hole with your companion tool. So you're actually using the shaft part there, all right? And that will actually be drilled through. So just rotate that. So you actually want to drill a little hole through there, okay? And that's going to dry like this, you see, and that's going to be how we would put this to dry, okay? So now I would put this in a food dehydrator. for about 2 hours. It should be dry, or as I said, just leave it like overnight or 3 or 4 hours to dry. But you need to make sure this is totally dry before you try to put this together, okay? And then next step I'm going to show you is how we assemble this. Then we'll let this dry. So because we actually assemble it with softened paste, then we need to let it dry. And then we will put the column on and finish off the flower. So now we're going to move on to the next step. So once the throat and then the back sepals and petals have dried, you're going to move on to the next step. Now, remember, there are two options here. You can make the one with the yellow, you can make the one with the white, all right? So both of them will have yellow dusted on them, but it's just as I explained, if this was, say, hot pink or dark pink or a very, very dark pink color, magenta color, then it would be difficult to dust yellow on the top. But on white or pastel colors, you can obviously make it just without the yellow parts onto it. So you've got the choice there, whichever you prefer to do. So I'm going to show you this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 more 24 gauge wires, and I'm going to tape those on to the existing wire with 1/4 width floral tape. Now, the reason for this is we want a little bit more strength, but we don't really want any bulk, okay? So we're just going to tape this around and just going to tape down with your 1/4 width tape here, okay? You need to get that nice and tight, because these 3 wires, 3 24 gauge wires, will be a little smaller than the shaft of the companion tool. Remember, we use the companion tool to make the, and you can just, doesn't have to be perfectly taped once you tape this part, because we're going to retape over this as well. All right. Now, usually I found with the Phalaenopsis it's actually easier to dust the components before we assemble this. All right. So I'm going to show you that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use some pearl dust, and I'm going to use some pearl dust, and then I'm going to cut this with some corn flour or cornstarch. So I'm going to use about 50-50. So what this means is it won't give it quite the same such a high shine as like on the Dendrobium, okay? So when I'm using pearl dust on flowers, sometimes I use it full strength, or sometimes I cut it with corn flour, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to then just brush this onto all over this part here. Just going to carefully brush this over the top part here. And just very, very carefully brush that onto your little tendrils, okay? Because these are quite, obviously quite fragile. And then you can also, while you've got your pearl dust, you can also brush this over this part as well. So just going to brush this over. So I'm just holding this on my hand, just going to brush over the surface of this like so. I'm going to turn this over. Just going to put the pearl dust over the orchid, okay? And because this needs to dry when you actually, usually I would sort of do it in this order, make your throat, make your petal sepals, let them dry, put them together, hang it upside down, because you need to let it dry for several hours. And then during that time, you can make your buds. And then when you finish the coloring on the flower, where we do the column, you then would finish off your bud. So I'm really showing you almost how I would do it typically in a class. And then what we're going to do is going to take then a little bit of yellow. So I'm going to use a little bit of, this is the like daffodil yellow color here. And I'm just going to brush this over the center part here, and just a little bit around there, because you have this like yellow around the center. So on this one, if you're doing this one, basically what you do there is you would just dust a little bit of additional yellow around here. All right, so you're just going to put a little bit of yellow around there, okay? But that also means, as I said, on a dark color, you'll be able to do that. And then we're going to take some, so this is some light apple green. So just a little bit of light apple green. I'm going to just use this just to dust here. Just this is difficult to get to afterwards. I'm also going to put just a little touch of green, just a really, really soft green, just on the very tip of your little tendrils. Just do that really, really carefully. you know, the mold is made so it's going to be strong enough, but it still has that nice realistic look onto it. And then you're also going to put a little bit of green. So just hold your flower just into the middle part here. All right. And then what we'll do is we'll do the rest of it. The color will be done after this is dried, okay? Once we got to that stage, we're going to take a food art pen, or again, you would use your really fine brush. And then you're going to do the little markings on here. Now, we're going to do little tiny dot, 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 dot on the top, all right? Because the Phalaenopsis orchid has these little tiny dots on the top of it like this. And then it has like little, almost like little lightning bolts, so like just like little squiggles here. And you're just going to do this with your fine paintbrush or with your food art pen, you see, and that gives you the markings on the orchid, okay? So this is a burgundy pen. Now, of course, for craft, you could use just a, you know, a fine, ultra fine Sharpie type of marker. And, you know, like sometimes all these pens are not necessarily available. So you could also use just like an ultra fine Sharpie, even on a sugar flower, because, you know, Sharpies are non-toxic, but also the fact you're not going to eat this because the fact it has a wire into it. So if you don't have access to the food art pens, the fine burgundy pen, you can just use like an ultra fine Sharpie. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to take a little bit of softened paste to use to attach this together. So we're going to take a little tiny piece of white paste, and with the white paste, we're going to make like a little glue. I've done this on some other of my lessons. So you're going to take a little bit of glue here, and I'm just going to just mix this together just to make a sort of a thick glue. So I'm just mixing this up to make almost like a sort of a thick royal icing type of consistency. Now in craft, if you were doing this for craft, if this was air drying clay, then you could just use a little tiny dot of hot glue and that will just set it instantly. And I have had students that, you know, like have done that because, like, again, if you were wanting to sort of go straight on to finish this off, you could just use the tiniest little dot of hot glue just to secure. But you see how I've made this like a thick glue, all right? So this is going to be like almost like a royal icing consistency. So I'm going to take my pair of tweezers. So these are some strong tweezers here. I'm going to just bend this down on itself. All right, so I'm just going to bend this down here like so. All right, and then I'm just going to just check that this is going to go through the hole here. All right, and it should fit through the hole. But as I said, just make sure you get your tape in nice and tight on here. I'm just going to just bend this up. So this will then just sit. So just very carefully use your finger because you want this to ultimately just sort of sit into position here like so, you see? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to take some of that softened paste and you're going to put a little of that softened paste into there. So you see how I'm just going to use my Dresden tool here. I'm just filling that into that little central area here with the softened paste, okay? So you just fill in that little tiny gap. So this is all sort of, as I said, important and crucial that you make the hole the right size. Remember that you have to make sure when you make the hole, it actually is the main shaft part size hole, because then that will fit 3 24 gauge wires with 1/4 width tape. That's why we wouldn't use 1/2 width tape, because 1/2 width tape would be too thick. So you're just going to fill this in, and you see how this is going to, and then you're also going to just take a little tiny piece of paste here and just going to just also just fill that the little tiny part of the hole there. Just going to fill that in as well, like that. Okay. All right. Just make sure that the throat is going to sit exactly correctly where it needs to be. All right. So that's going to be the sort of the angle you want it to be. And then what you do is you're just going to hang this upside down. All right, so we're just going to bring in my drying rack here. Take my orchid off of that and just going to just hang this upside down like this to dry. All right, and this is just going to dry upside down. Now, you can also, with a food dehydrator, my food dehydrator has several shelves. So I can take out, for example, all of the shelves except the top one. So you can actually then hang it on the shelf and then slide it into the food dehydrator. So you'd leave it in there for 2 or 3 hours, but I would just suggest leaving this for like overnight or at least about 6 hours to dry. And then what we do is we'll come back and finish this off where we're going to add a column, and then we'll obviously dust a little bit of green on the back of this and finish this off. So as I said, once this is dry, we'll go on to the next step. So here we have actually the food dehydrator. So this is just to show you what a food dehydrator is. There are many versions of food dehydrators. There are round ones and oval ones. The one I personally like is this type of design. There are many companies, like in the US I use a brand called Excalibur. This is a European brand which obviously came in my signature green, which I was very excited about. But so basically the thing with the food dehydrator, you have obviously here and on off, and then you have a timer. So basically you could set this, if you had something like a peony drying, you could just set it for 8 hours and go to bed. And then, you know, obviously it's totally safe to leave on because it's a very low temperature. You also have obviously a thermostat here to control the temperature. And as I said, obviously in Europe, we have it at 45°C, which is approximately 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And most of the sort of the higher end food dehydrators have obviously a temperature control. So we've got a fairly low temperature. I actually also use this for baking. You can do macarons in here, you can do meringues and things like that can be actually baked in here. So it's useful for drying out things, of course, like herbs and that. But as I said, for flowers, it's perfect. I also use this for cake. You know, when I'm making decorations for cakes, you're doing a tiara, you're doing a shoe, you could just pop it in there and dry it out. Now, the food dehydrator, this particular one, which is pretty much the same as most of them, it has these shelves. So obviously these shelves, this actually has 9 of these shelves which go inside the food dehydrator. So of course you can put things, lay things onto here on foam or on fun foam. But when I'm generally making flowers, what I'm doing here is I'm using just the top rack, and this particular one has this more open like grid rack. And then the idea is you can just hang your orchid or your peonies or your roses or whatever, and you just would slide that carefully back into there, put the lid in, and it's going to dry perfectly. Okay, so those of you who live in a humid environment, this is a really great way to make sure your flowers are going to totally dry out and works really well. I also use this when I make cookies and biscuits. When I flood them with royal icing, I pop them in there for about 90 minutes. But usually, as I said, temperature is 115 or 45°C, and that's the temperature I normally would use. So when we are making the orchid, so obviously we have the orchid, and this has been in here for now a couple of hours, all right? So it is now dry. And when you are making your orchids, let's leave the lid off of this for a moment because I'm going to pop this back into here. When we're making the orchids, all right, so once we make the orchid there, we're going to take it out of the food dehydrator, and then I'm going to take some half-width floral tape, and with some half-width floral tape, I'm just going to tape the back of the orchid. So what I want to try and do is just be careful because the petals are going to stick out a little bit. Just go around with your floral tape. You can't really slide this up, but I'm just going to go around a few times with the floral tape, just building up a little bit of bulk of tape at the back here, all right? This just sort of finishes it off nicely because we don't have a calyx, and you're gonna just tape this down. I'm just gonna tape down to the bottom, so this is gonna give you obviously a nice, because remember we did this with 1/4 width tape here. Okay, and then you're going to take your pair of pliers. With your pair of pliers, just going to just take this about 1 centimeter down and just bend this forward. Now, in making the wings, all right, there are 2 main types of shape of the Phalaenopsis. Some of them have this more just a plain petal like this one, and then some have this more defined, almost like a crease there, okay? When I showed this, I showed it just the basic one, all right? And then as I said, some varieties will have this more of a crease. So when you do that, all right, I've already got a petal made here just to show you. What you do is once you have got your petal rolled out, you turn it over, like I showed you obviously on the earlier segment. You're going to go around with your balling tool. I should just ball tool this. So it's going to go around with your balling tool here, like this. And then all you then will do is you're just going to literally just fold the petal in half, like that, and just put like a little gentle crease onto the petal, okay? And then when you open it out, you'll have this defined crease, all right? But it's just when you look on the internet, it's some of them have, when you look on like a Google search, you'll see some Phalaenopsis have this, some varieties don't. So basically, and another way you can do that is you can also just put your companion tool underneath the petal and just almost just pinch it on the top of the companion tool like that, you see? So when you put your two petals on, you see how you're gonna have this little bit more of a, like a slightly defined crease there on the petal, all right? So basically you have that option of doing that or not doing that, all right? And then the other thing I discussed, you know, like when you're making your center, because the center part, we made that in 4 little pieces, you might have just like a little tiny, you know, like not really a crack, but just where the seam is. So what we would do is you would, when you soften your paste, all right, when you soften your gum paste, your flower and petal paste, just keep some in a little pot. All right, and so then once your center is dry, you literally could take some of that softened paste and you can just use that to fill in, just smooth that with your finger, and that will fill in as an invisible join. This is also what I use to, if you had a breakage, so if you actually have a breakage on a petal, you can actually use this like a sort of a glue, okay? So that's the softened paste. And you can actually just keep this in a little container, and you can actually just keep this in the fridge because it's got egg white in, and obviously just you reuse it. If it gets a bit dry, you can just add a little bit more egg white to it, all right? So that's, as I said, just a couple of little tips there with that part. Now, once you have got your orchid out, all right, and you've taped it, we're then going to take your mat, all right, and we're going to use the column here. So this is the column mold, all right, and this we're going to use without a wire because it's going to go into the center. Now we added this technique because some techniques of making moth orchids, Phalaenopsis orchids, some people make the column on a wire, and then they would make this part and wrap it around the column, a little bit like how we did the Cymbidium, and then actually wire these petals, all right? The way I've shown you is a little bit of a different technique, but as I said, this could be used also for other varieties of orchid as well. So, you know, we put the wire on there so you can do obviously a wired column. But in this case, we're not going to use this ridge here. We're just going to put a little tiny bit of shortening into here. It's a number 4 size ball of paste. All right, so this is your number 4. Okay, and this is actually going to be to make the column. So we're actually doing this in complete reverse to the other orchids. And the column is the last thing we add onto this. And then we're going to put a little cornstarch onto there. I'm going to pop that into the mold. Just going to press that in with your cosmetic sponge. Just make sure that will basically fill the mold up level. Just make sure that you keep within the perimeter of the mold. So you can just pull down with your little companion tool here, like so. All right, we're going to flex this, going to take it out of the mold. So you're going to get, so really it's just like a larger version of the Dendrobium and the Cymbidium one, okay? Like the Dendrobium shape. And I'm going to, just like I did on the Dendrobium, I'm going to cup your 2 arms, and you're going to cup your head, all right? Now this is going to have a flat side, and then you're going to have the top part, which is going to be a little bit like a turtle shell, okay? So you need to have it upside down. And then what we're actually going to do is going to take a little bit of softened paste. Now, the reason I'm using softened paste here, this will dry a little quicker. You could use egg white, but the thing is the softened paste is going to dry quicker. It's also a little stronger as well. So I'm going to take just a little bit of more of my softened paste. So that's why you just, when you mix that up to stick the orchid together, just put it in a little plastic bag or a little container like this, and you've got it ready to go once this is dry. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put just a little tiny bit of that softened paste just onto the top of where the middle is. And I'm going to lift up my little column here. Just going to lift this up on with my companion tool. So this is actually like laying down. So this is the flat side of it, where it was in the mold upwards, where we cupped it. Right, and then just using your Dresden tool, or you can use your companion tool. Basically, you just want to just press that in. Just going to press that down like this. You're just actually pressing the bottom of the column with a Dresden tool or your little companion tool. And then what you do is you then just fold this over. So you see, you actually fold this over like a little hood. You see this will actually come like a little hood, so actually will cover over that part there, okay? Okay, so that will go into there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put it back into your food dehydrator. Now what I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to lay it on the food dehydrator. I'm not going to hang it upside down because if not the tongue would come back. But I'm just going to lay it carefully in my food dehydrator. Now I'm just going to put it in there for literally about 30 minutes will be enough time for that to dry. So next up is going to be showing you how to make the buds, and then I'll show you how we put this all together. So now moving on to make the buds. Now these are the buds of the Phalaenopsis, the moth orchid, which is commonly known. And of course, you know, the moth orchid comes in many colors. Obviously, I'm showing the classic white. Now we're going to use the same cavity we used for the Vanda orchids. And if you remember, those were made in two halves, all right? The buds of the Phalaenopsis, as you can see, are the same sort of basic shape at the bottom, but they're not as long and pointed. So they're a little bit more sort of like a dull cone shape, all right? So we're going to use the same mold, but we're also going to use a different technique, like a little bit like on my peony, for the center of the Oriental peony, where we're actually going to make the cone all in one and rotate it in the mold. So to make this, we use the same principle for the floral tape bud as we would for the Vanda orchid. So for the two largest buds, all right, we're going to take a 26 gauge wire, half width green floral tape, and you're going to go 5 times, 3, 4, 5, hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? I'm just going to tape down the wire about 2/3, 3/4 of the way down. Now for the two largest buds, we'll use number 8 small and number 7 small. All right, so this is just whatever color you've made the orchid in. And again, just like I talked about in the Cymbidium and some of the other orchids, you know, there are varieties of Phalaenopsis which might have a white sort of throat, and then the actual petals at the back would be pink or sort of dark pink or purple color. So obviously whatever color the back sepals are, this part here, all right, that's the color you would make the bud, because again, this is a closed up, the bud is basically a closed up flower, okay? And so always think of that when you're making flowers. That includes pretty much most flowers. So we have here, this is a 7 small and this is an 8 small, okay? All right, so those will be the two sizes we're going to use for the two largest buds. I'm going to show you here the 8 small one. And then what we do here, just going to take your paste, we're going to just condition this the same way as we did before. So this is just a different, as I said, technique we're using. So when I designed these molds, obviously I made this cavity. So this is used for both the Vanda and the Phalaenopsis buds, but used in a slightly different way. So a little bit of egg white goes onto your floral tape bud. You're going to insert this into your number 8 small. Just going to mold this around. And you just want this like, almost like a ball shape, all right, but just a little tiny bit of a point on it. So you're going to get this sort of just slight cone shape like this, you see, all right? Okay, and then when you put this in the mold, what you actually do here, you put it in the mold. So the mold, you can see here, it's got a line in the bottom, okay? So what we do there is you put this into the mold, and you're just going to just gently push it in with your fingers. So you're just almost using your fingers like this, just to sort of push this in to the mold. So when you take it out of the mold, you see it's got a line on it, okay? Now then what you do is you rotate it so the line is actually level with the side of the mold. So you're going to just make the line level with the side of the mold for the second one, and you're going to push that down. This will give you your second line on here, all right? So you've got, now you have the second line, and then you do that a third time. So you line that up, and I'm using the left-hand edge. I just found that because I'm right-handed. Obviously if you're left-handed, you could do the other one. Then you line that up with the level with the edge of the mold again, and you're just going to press that down just gently. Just almost just pinch that a little bit, and this will give you your three lines here. So you see what that does, it actually divides your buds into thirds. And all I then do is, because it's going to have a little bit more of a blunt end, you're just going to use your companion tool just to mark the top of this, 1, 2, 3, and that is how you would make a beautiful bud for your Phalaenopsis orchid, you see? You get this very realistic looking shape, and as I said, that's going to be used in the mold. So this is just like I did on the Oriental peony. Now, when you make the small buds, So when you make the small bud, you'll use same technique. And I said this is identical to the Vanda as far as how we prepare the wire. That is going to be just 2 times hook times 2. So 1, 2, hook it over. Remember, if you've got a little, use a little cornstarch, corn flour if you need to, and then 2 and 2. So 2 times hook times 2. All right. And I'll show you here and then the smallest ones are going to be number 6 and number 5. Okay, so we have 8 small, 7 small, number 6, and then number 5. Okay, and so I'll show you this number 6 one. So again, same technique, a little bit of egg white onto your floral tape bud, just so you can see this a second time. Remember, just make that into a little cone there. You can put a little cornstarch on. You won't need to put any vegetable fat or shortening into this mold because obviously you're not really pressing the paste in. So again, you see this is going to be, so you see it won't come to right to the top of the mold. So you're just going to just press this in with your, so just pinch like each side with your fingers, all right? And then you take it out of the mold and you see you've got the line on there. Then you rotate it around so the line is going to be level with the side of the mold. This will be the second time. Take this out, and then you're going to do this a third time. I'm going to press this on like so. All right, and then you're going to get, then all we're going to do is where the lines are, just going to mark those to the top. 1, 2. This is the third one here. You see again, you're going to have this nice shaped bud. Okay, so that is how you would make your buds. So your buds are going to be here. And again, you could of course pop these in the food dehydrator. Now of course, I've shown the flower all the way through and then I've shown the buds. But normally, you know, I would basically make my petal, make your column or your throat part. Then you could make obviously the sepals and petals, you could make your buds, then let everything dry, then obviously put your orchid together. So this orchid is a little bit more of a process, meaning that you've got a longer time span because of you have to dry it. You know, once you obviously dry the pieces, you have to put it together, let it dry, put the column on, let it dry a little bit more, whereas the others are just basically made, dried, and put together. So next step is going to be the assembly, and then we're going to move on to the coloring. So now we're going to move on to the coloring. Now you can obviously put these together, the buds, and then color them. But because the flower is almost really mostly 99% colored, I'm going to just color the buds separately. So again, I'm just going to take my, you know, the half of the cornflower cornstarch and then the pearl just to cut that intensity a little bit. And I'm just going to just brush that over the buds. So we're just going to brush the buds over with that. You just remember this doesn't make it quite as shiny, so I use this on a lot of flowers. And then we're going to then take some, I'm going to use a second napkin here, some green. So I'm going to use the green I used on the flower, and there's going to be the light apple green. So this is going to be a sort of like a pale sort of limey color. And so what you'll do is on here is you're going to put this color. So pretty much the smallest bud wants to be almost completely green. I'm just going to leave just a little tiny bit at the top of this, just a little tiny bit white. But then you're going to then, as you come down, so I'm going to come up about halfway up this one here. And then on the bigger ones, you'll be about a third of the way up with the green, see? So you just create that natural sort of look, that growing cycle with the buds. So you're predominantly coming down around the bottom and then just sort of almost like cutting into where the little line is on the bud. Okay. Then I'm going to take a second green, which is going to be prairie. So this is a little bit of a stronger green here. I'm just going to put that right at the bottom, and that just sort of, so you have almost the two greens here. So you're going to use the prairie green just right at the bottom. So you're just going to get this sort of dark, slightly darker green here. I often do this on things. I would use like a lighter green and then just a slightly darker green. So once you get the green onto there, then on the bud. And then we're going to take the So I've already taken my flower out of the food dehydrator. And I'm just going to take my flour out. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just going to use that pearl. I'm just going to just dust that over the center part. This doesn't have to be completely dry. I've done this in actual time, so this was only in the food dehydrator for about 10 minutes, but it's dry enough that it sort of held its shape. Okay, so put a little bit of pearl dust onto there. And then we're going to then take the greens. So we're going to put the pale green. So the pale green is going to just go into that sort of center. And just going to brush that in right in the middle there. Okay, so your little hood will be covered there. You'll also put the green onto the back, because remember when we made this, we didn't put any green on the back because it's not really necessary. Plus also when you're handling things, because once you steam it, the steam will set the powder. But as I said, so if we put green on here, handling it, you would have probably just taken it off with the moisture from your fingers, okay? And then I'm going to take just a little bit of the darker green here. So just right at the base of the orchid here, I will put the darker green just right at the bottom there, like that. And then just a little tiny bit into the middle, just into the back here, like that. So you're just going to have that sort of just slightly darker color onto there, okay? Now, of course, if you're doing the Phalaenopsis orchid, you know, this does come in bright pink and like purple. And of course, now there's a lot of like, they dye a lot of orchids, so you'll find like blue versions of these and things. So of course, when you're working with some of those darker tones, you would generally are going to use, like a darker green, like an apple green, okay? But obviously on the white or pale pink, you can use a light apple. All right, so we're going to start off with the assembly. So I'm going to start off with the buds. Very similar to the way we did the Vanda orchid. These sort of grow like in a stem like this. So this is the basic way that the Phalaenopsis orchid buds grow. So they almost come like at a right angle here. And so you're going to just sort of have your orchid, and you'll have your next one. I'm just showing you one of each bud so you get an idea. And just sort of, it just comes up like this, and then you're going to come down just a little ways, and then you're going to put in your next bud. And again, of course, I've used Phalaenopsis many times on wedding cakes where I haven't used any buds. I've used just the orchid on its own. But if you're doing a spray, you know, just with orchids, it's nice to have the buds. And of course, because many people use Flower Pro for home decor, so if you were making, as I said, this Phalaenopsis was made in air drying clay for you to put into a flower pot, or an orchid plant where it's not flowering to look like it's a flowering orchid, then you're going to need to use your buds as well. Now at this point here, we're going to then take 3 20 gauge wires. Now if you were doing a big spray, all right, so if you were doing a larger spray with say 3 or 4 flowers on, I would use 18 gauge wires, all right? And you're just going to tape down here. And then what you do is you're going to sort of bend that at an angle, all right? Because sort of this is sort of like how they grow, okay? And then I'm just going to tape down the wire. And remember from my calla lily, you know, when I did my calla lily, if you watch that video, you can also use like wire coat hangers when you need like a strong wire, like an 18 gauge wire. And then that way you just would actually just use 1 wire coat hanger or 3 18 gauge wires. Remember, the reason why we use 3 wires rather than 1 would be too skinny, but 2 will also give you an oval stem. 3 wires will give you a triangle. So that means the 3 wires, 1, 2, 3, will give you a round stem, okay? And then you're just going to just take your Phalaenopsis here. So you're just going to take your Phalaenopsis, and then we're just going to, as I said, this is commonly called the moth orchid because it looks a little bit like a moth. You know, some varieties of orchids like Miltonia is called the pansy orchid, and obviously Papapedium is the slipper orchid. So some of them have common names, but you know, some don't. So. But this is a very, very popular house plant. You know, one time this was very sort of exotic and tropical, and but now it's, you know, most grocery stores, supermarkets, home centers sell these, so it's a very inexpensive orchid. So, But as I said, this would be beautiful to make in air drying clay and then to put in your bathroom or obviously things. Now just remember, with air drying clay, obviously everything I show on my Flower Pro videos is obviously done in gum paste and sugar. But with air drying clay, obviously there are, it's very lightweight. But the other thing is that when you are using air drying clay, you would use exactly the same process for the coloring. And then I would then lightly spray this with unscented hairspray. The hairspray acts as a fixative and it basically sets the powder, all right? When we do sugar, we steam them and the steam basically gives the same effect. It sets the powder. The reason why you wouldn't use steam on the air drying clay is because air drying clay is porous. It doesn't really have any benefit in steaming it. It won't do anything to it. But as I said, just a light spray of unscented hairspray will basically set the powder, and you'll have, as I said, the color will not come off of your flowers. So this is going to be steamed, all right? So this is going to be steamed here. This one here, I'm just going to just sort of add the flower to this one. This one has got five buds on. So this one has got 5 buds on here. Just going to just steam these 2 flowers. Come down with the steam here. There we go. All right. And then I'm just going to take the steamer. Just going to lightly steam these. Now just be really careful of your tendrils, all right? So just going to be really careful of your tendrils. And don't hold it too close to the steam, all right? I'm just going to steam this one a little bit as well. And that will give you your Phalaenopsis orchid, okay? And you can see here you've got the Phalaenopsis here. So you have your... So remember, this one has got who's got a little bit more of like a line here, and this one hasn't. So here is your Moth orchid. Again, a very stunning flower, very elegant, timeless flower to use on a wedding cake, but great for an anniversary and things. And I hope you'll have a lot of fun making the Phalanopsis, the Vanda, the Cymbidium, the Oncidium, and the Dendrobium using the Flower Pro Ultimate Orchid set. And until next time, sweet wishes, being Chef Nicholas Lodge. Have fun flower making. See you soon.